Take the fair face of woman, and gently suspending with butterflies, flowers and jewels attending, thus your fairy is made of most beautiful things. In the real world, there are no legendary creatures steeped in more mystery than the fairies. Stories of encounters with such whimsical beings are seldom told in a lucid fashion. Instead, there is a kind of narcotic dreaminess associated with the fairies. They are often encountered by noble knights on grand quests. In less romantic tales, fairy women would take on the shapes of animals to shoo mortals away from their sacred glades and groves. Or perhaps they would allure unsuspecting mortals into their fairy rings, whisking them away from reality, taking them to fairyland, the land of the Fae. Unsurprisingly, where folktales exist in our world, there is almost always tangible documented evidence of their existence in the Elder Scrolls universe. Fairies are no exception, and if you wander deep enough into the forest, you're bound to stumble into one's domain. This may come as a surprise to you, as fairies are quite possibly the most mysterious of all the beings to live on Tamriel. In recorded history, you could count the number of times fairies have been referenced or acknowledged on your fingers. But while some fairies are elusive and mysterious, like the whimsical pranksters called pixies, or the nereid sea spirits of Valenwood's coastal regions, who appear as beautiful maidens and sing mesmerising melodies beneath the surface of the sea, there are some more abundant fairies you may have encountered in your travels through High Rock, or Cyrodiil, Skyrim or Solstheim. These particular fairies, like most fairies, take on the form of women, only they are tree spirits, and they share an unbreakable bond with the woodland. Beware, traveller, do not be fooled by their elegant feminine forms, for they are fiercely territorial, and will turn the forces of the wilderness against you if you threaten the tranquility of their secluded habitats. These verdant creatures I speak of are called Spriggans. Hey guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. The mortals of Tamriel would lead you to believe that the land is theirs to buy and sell, to deforest and reap until their hearts are content. But stray far enough from civilization, and you'll see that for the lie that it is. In this video, we're going to be exploring one of the most fascinating creatures found in the viridescent regions of Tamriel. The Spriggans are more than just animated stacks of magically infused sticks. They have a preternatural connection to the land, and they are far more than just a source of firewood and taproots for the last Dragonborn. But before we get into that, what exactly are Spriggans? Spriggans, or nature's guardians as they are colloquially known in some areas, are tree-like creatures found in densely forested areas of Tamriel. In Skyrim, they appear to be sentient wooden effigies, made from boughs and twigs roughly forming a humanoid shape. In High Rock and Cyrodiil, however, Spriggans look more like women than they do like trees, with smoothed skin as if the bark had been sanded away. But they are not likely to be mistaken for mortal women anytime soon. Wildflowers grow from their limbs and torso, and their hands are like gnarled scions, carved haphazardly from the trees. On the Isle of Solstheim, both the more feminine variety and the more ligneous variety have been spotted, but it is here on Solstheim that an especially uncanny type of Spriggan came into being. When the Red Year came at the beginning of the Fourth Era and Red Mountain erupted, clouds of ash billowed from the neighbouring island of Vardenfell. The Herstang forest of Solstheim was coated in an undulating black smog. The salubrious scent of snow-covered conifers was rudely overpowered by smouldering ash and soot, which scorched the once healthy land and gave rise to the burnt Spriggans. These Spriggans closely resembled the ones you'd encounter in Skyrim, only their wooden exteriors had undergone severe pyrolysis, and thus the limbs and branches were turned almost to charcoal. Incredibly, this unnatural change in environment and physiology did not weaken the burnt Spriggans, and they mastered new magical powers. While regular Spriggans would call upon the forces of the wild, summoning bees and rejuvenating from their inflicted injuries, burnt Spriggans could cast torrents of fire from their hands, and would self-destruct in an explosion of flame when close to death. There aren't any other known cases of Spriggans adapting to environmental change in the way the burnt Spriggans have, but there are some more types found in Tamriel, namely Spriggan matrons and Spriggan earth mothers. The former is a larger, more muscular version of the common Spriggan, while the latter variants are significantly stronger with a distinctly darker coloration to its body. Regardless of the variety though, one thing is consistent among Spriggans. Beneath the bark and the foliage, a magical luminous aura is emitted. The common Spriggan radiates an aura the colour of budding leaves in spring, adding another green hue to the forest, while the more powerful matrons and earth mothers emit instead an orange and purple light respectively. Spriggans are moderately intelligent and can actually communicate with one another in their own language. Scholars have found that adopting the language of the Spriggans can be used to calm agitated animals. Their connection to the forest makes Spriggans the subject of veneration in some cultures, usually more pagan ones. The Skald tribes of Solstheim, for example, believe that the Spriggans came into being when the Allmaker breathed the essence of life into the land, and his breath susurrated through the trees. To tribes who do not originate from Atmora, and thus do not worship the Allmaker, the Spriggans are instead associated with Kynareth, which is fitting considering she is the divine who holds dominion over the elements, the heavens, the winds, and the unseen spirits of the air. Despite being the subjects of reverence to some Tamrielic cultures, Spriggans are generally hostile towards men, mer, and beastfolk alike. But this does not inspire said cultures to aim their worship elsewhere. In fact, the hostile nature of Spriggans is essential to their purpose in the mortal realm. They are viewed as guardian spirits. They are the protectors of the wilderness, who will eternally be devoted to the safekeeping of all natural life in the woodlands. No wonder they have such an innate affinity with the creatures of the forest. If you find yourself in a remote village, living beneath the shade of the dense canopy overhead, and you happen to find some honest work chopping wood, you best remain alert. For if a Spriggan is present when you sink your axe into a tree, they will certainly unleash the forces of the wild upon you. Expect a surge of hornets to swarm you, piercing you with their poisonous stingers. And if they feel threatened by you, they may just call for backup, enthralling a bear or a wolf to spring from the thickets. Interestingly, Spriggans tend to be found in denser numbers closer to sacred sites. While they are protective of all greenery, they gather in large numbers to guard ancient trees like the Eldergleam tree or the First tree. They're even known for taking a special care of Nirnroot. If you're familiar with the work of Sinderian or have seen our video on the Crimson Nirnroot, you'll know that there is more to this peculiar plant than just an effulgent glow and a painfully annoying drone. The plant may actually possess astounding healing potential that is yet to be tapped. In other words, the plant is rife with magical energy. In a similar vein, the Eldergleam tree is impervious to all damage except for that inflicted by the old magic. The sap of the Eldergleam tree is rumoured to be able to restore barren fields, or even bring life to rocks. And this is what brings us onto the point of the video. Beyond simply learning the basics of what Spriggans are, these tree spirits serve a crucial role on the mortal plane, a role far more salient than simply providing an obstacle for unsuspecting travellers. A great deal can be learned about the lore of the Elder Scrolls by looking at the folklore of the real world, and Spriggans feature heavily in European folklore, most notably as a type of spirit in Cornish fairy lore, Cornwall being that southwestern county of England. Only in these legends, Spriggans were portrayed usually with masculine features and protected buried treasure as opposed to nature itself. In both Tamrielic and real-world lore, these woodland spirits are closely associated with fairies, and as I alluded to at the beginning of the video, fairies were notorious for making life difficult for travellers on the forest path. Another facet of real-world lore and mythology that seems to be a likely inspiration for Tamriel's Spriggans is the Leshy of Slavic folklore. Now, if you know of the Leshens from the Witcher universe, or if you've seen my video on them, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But the Leshy is a deity who rules over the forest. He can command wolves, bears, crows, and other animals of the wild, and he is vigilant in his task of guarding the forest from trespassers. Now, from our encounters with the Spriggans across High Rock, Skyrim, Cyrodiil and Solstheim, it's fair to say that they are not mindless monsters only out for blood. If mortals didn't have such a history of abusing the forests for materials or sustenance, I'm sure the Spriggans would have no cause to become hostile against travellers. They are guardian spirits, not primitive beasts incapable of attributing a motive to their aggression, and it is therefore the impossible task of the Spriggans to attempt to defend the most hallowed natural landmarks and resources on Tamriel, while ambitious men and mer endlessly endeavour to tap these sacred magics for their own benefit. That is their purpose, bestowed upon them by Kynareth. I'm sure the Spriggans would be relieved to learn that, despite being taken from the wild as a cutting from the Eldergleam tree, the Gildergreen tree in the heart of Whiterun remains alive and well. This can be chalked up to the veneration of Kine in Skyrim, however, rather than a mortal respect for nature. But that's hardly enough peace of mind to allow the Spriggans to become lax in their duties, and when the last Dragonborn arrives at the Eldergleam Sanctuary, wielding Nettlebane, a cruel and ancient blade used by the Hagravens to sacrifice Spriggans, they are unsurprisingly hostile. The blade is old enough to carve through the bark of the Eldergleam tree, and could utterly destroy it in the wrong hands. After extracting the sap from the tree with Nettlebane, the Spriggans ambush the Dragonborn. Among other sacred sites, the sanctity of the Eldergleam tree could quite easily be sullied if left without protection. All it would take is one man with a shortage of coin, and the tree would likely be cut down, its saplings sold to the highest bidder. You can see why they aren't fond of trusting mortals. So that's a little something to think about when you send a Spriggan's spirit back into the soil. But there you have it guys, the lore of the Spriggans, an often misunderstood creature with mysterious origins and a profound purpose to serve on Tamriel. I hope you enjoyed the video, thanks so much for watching, I've been Drew and I'll see you in the next one.